Welcome to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, Office of Museum Services information video. Museum Grants for African American History and Culture Grant Program Applicant Information Session. The goal of this video is to provide an overview of our Museum Grants for African American History and Culture Grant Program, which we call AAHC for short, and the process of preparing an application for funding. This video is organized into 6 chapters. What is Museum Grants for African American History and Culture? This section explains the purpose and design of the AAHC grant program. What can AAHC grants fund? This section explains the types of projects that can be funded in AAHC and the amount of funds that can be requested. Application components. This section describes the types of documents that are needed to create an AAHC grant application. Application components, the narrative. This section provides guidance on composing the narrative part of the application. Application components budget. This section provides details on the information to include in your project budget. Application tips and next steps. The concluding section provides a few tips and next steps for preparing your application. The complete set of instructions for how to prepare and submit an AAHC grant application are found in the Notice of Funding Opportunity published on grants.gov and also available on the IMLS website. Please refer to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the most detailed information to prepare your application. To get the most out of this video, we recommend that you watch it in its entirety. This will give you an understanding of the AAHC grant program, the types of projects that can be funded, and the necessary application components. You may also want to review the AAHC Notice of Funding Opportunity before, during, and after you watch the video. Notices of Funding Opportunities, also known as NOFOs, are documents that detail the requirements of each of our grant programs for fiscal year 2024. All of our NOFOs can be found at imls.gov/grants. As you navigate the application process, you can use this video as a reference tool. If you'd like to skip to a specific section, please use the time bar below or the links in the description box to navigate the chapters. In this section, we will answer the question, what is AAHC? Providing information on the purpose and intent of this grant program and who it is designed to serve. The same legislation that created the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture directed IMLS to create a grant program. This program is designed to build the capacity of African American museums, nurture the growth and development of museum professionals at African American museums, and increase access to museum and archival collections at African American museums and historically Black colleges and universities, also known as HBCUs. AAHC is a grant program for museums whose primary purpose, as reflected in its mission, is African American life, art, history, and/or culture. To apply for federal funding at IMLS, all applicants must meet certain requirements. Your organization must be located in one of the United States' 50 states, its territories, or the District of Columbia. Your organization could also be a unit of state, local, or tribal government, or a private nonprofit organization with tax-exempt status. If you meet those 2 requirements, then the next step is to consider what it means to be eligible for IMLS funding as a museum. To be eligible for funding as a museum, your organization must have at least 1 full-time or equivalent professional staff person, either paid or unpaid, have a physical location that it owns or operates, have been open to the public for at least 120 days in the year prior to the deadline of November 15th, 2023, and own or use tangible objects. Your organization may also be your museum may also be standalone organizations, or they may be part of a larger institution, such as a college, university, tribe, or a state of local government. You could also qualify as a not-for-profit museum service organization or association whose primary purpose, as reflected in its mission, is to support African American museums. HBCUs are also eligible to apply whether they have a museum or museum studies program or not. In this section, we will answer the question, what can AAHC fund? Providing details on the types of projects and associated goals within the AAHC grant program, as well as offer some summary data on the number and types of AAHC projects that were funded last year. AAHC grants are designed to support project-based activities. So let's take time to consider just exactly what that means. The Project Management Institute defines a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. They go on further to explain that a project is temporary because it has a defined beginning and end in time, and therefore a defined scope and resources. And the project is unique in that it is not a routine operation, but rather a specific set of operations designed to accomplish a singular goal. We recommend that you keep this definition in mind as you conceptualize your IMLS project, thinking of it as a temporary, non-routine set of activities which collectively have a beginning and end in time, a defined scope requiring specific resources, and which are designed to accomplish a specific singular goal. With that concept of project in mind, let's turn to project goals. The type of project activity you are seeking to fund should align with one of these goals listed on the slide. As you can see here, there are two options, building capacity and professional development. Why is your decision about which project goal to choose so important? For one thing, your application will be reviewed by museum professionals who have experience and expertise in these general categories. And for another, your application will be competing against others who have chosen the same category. In short, the entire review process incorporates an assumption that your project aligns with the goal you've identified, so it's an important choice. So let's take a look at what kinds of project activities might fit within these goal areas. The listed objectives provide some of the types of projects that fit within the goal. Projects designed to build the capacity of African American museums may involve increasing the number of museum professionals working at African American museums to enable the museum to expand educational programs, engage the community, enhance professional management, or provide for improved care of collections. Some examples of the kinds of project activities that you may apply for are exhibition development, design, and fabrication, interpretive and educational programs, product development and delivery, developing collection plans, interpretive plans, or strategic plans using consultants, researchers, and other sources of professional expertise, implementing recommendations or action plans from planning activities, cataloging, inventorying, documenting, and registering collections, and finally, digitization of collections designed to enhance outreach, expand access, or improve collections management. Projects designed to address Goal 2, supporting the growth and development of museum professionals at African American museums, may involve developing and implementing internship, fellowship, and mentoring programs to support emerging professionals entering the museum field. They can involve developing equitable and inclusive staff recruitment and retention programs, as well as creating growth opportunities for staff to build skills, enhance their knowledge, and share expertise. Some examples of the kinds of project activities that you may apply for are working with consultants and training providers to develop and offer workshops and training for museum staff, leadership, and volunteers, creating and supporting paid internships and fellowships, including recruitment, supervision, mentoring, and training for those interns and fellows, providing professional development and career growth opportunities for museum staff, leadership, and volunteers. Before we close our discussion of project goals, we want to again mention our guidance for projects that could belong logically in more than one. Sometimes it's tough to choose, and you might be tempted to think that the best strategy would be to align with both. We advise against that for several reasons. We expect that projects aligned with a specific goal will address different problems, use different approaches, and will measure success in achieving the intended results in different ways. So how can you choose the best category for your project? Here are 3 things we suggest you try. Think carefully about what is in the center of your project. Is it the visitor? Will people who engage with you as a result of your project, let's say to create a new exhibition and related programming, acquire new knowledge, develop a skill, or experience a change in attitude about the subject of your exhibit? Or is it the museum staff that's in the center of your thinking? Or is your project about preparing the next generation of the museum workforce? A second way to go at this might be to think about who you want to review your application. If you apply under building capacity, we will put your application in front of museum educators, exhibits professionals, interpretive specialists, and professionals with deep experience in understanding what is needed for a museum to reach its full performance level and be successful. Would you rather we put it in front of a combination of experts who specialize in developing and executing a wide range of museum training? If that sounds right, then it may push you toward professional development. A third option is to list the activities you plan to carry out and think about the project budget. To which category are the majority of project time and resources allocated? Again, our most important advice is to choose one project goal and write your proposal accordingly. As always, if you have questions, contact the IMLS staff to discuss them. Our next topic has to do with how much funding your project requires. The size of your project and how much you are requesting in IMLS funds will determine the cost share requirement. There are 2 options to consider. For small projects requesting an amount of federal funds less than $100,000, you do not need to provide a cost share. This option is designed for smaller scale projects. For larger projects that are requesting an amount of federal funds greater than $100,001 and up to a maximum of $500,000, you must provide a 1-to-1 cost share. Cost share can take a number of forms. Among them are cash, staff time, volunteer time, third-party contributions, grants from foundations, and support from state or local government. Cost share cannot come from other federal sources. The amount of applications received and the amount of awards made can vary from year to year. Here's a snapshot of our most recent application and award cycle. In FY23, IMLS made 34 AAHC awards with a total of $6 million in federal funds. We received 66 AAHC applications last year, resulting in 52% of those applications being funded. About 38% of the AAHC awards were for large projects, with the remaining 62% being small projects. The average amount of federal funds for each project was about $171,000. Here you will see different ways that cost share could be applied to a funding request of $100,000 or less. While cost share is not required at this funding level, you may elect to identify cost share anyway, and it does not have to be one-to-one. Please note that it is not advised to commit to a cost share larger than your IMLS funding request, and it will not be seen as a competitive edge over the other applications. Here you will see the one-to-one cost share applied for projects requesting $100,001 up to the maximum of $500,000. For these projects, the one-to-one cost share is required. And again, it is not advised that you overcommit to a cost share larger than your grant request. In this section, we will introduce the components of an AAHC grant application and provide an overview about the required, conditionally required, and supporting documents. The AAHC Notice of Funding Opportunity, the NOFO, includes a complete list of all the application components. Most of these components are created by applicants and saved as a PDF for uploading as part of your application package in grants.gov. The table of application components, starting on page 8 of the NOFO, lists which application components are required, as well as those that are conditionally required. For example, some components are included in the application depending on the type of applicant or the type of project. Aside from the SF424S and the IMLS Museum Program Information Form, which are completed in the grants.gov workspace, all application components must be submitted as PDF documents. These are the required documents. All applications must include the documents listed here. Omission of even just one might result in your application's rejection. Also important to note, there is a 7-page limit for the narrative. If you exceed the page limit specified in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, we must remove the extras before your application goes out for review. That means your reviewer may see a paragraph or sentence end in midair and will wonder about your organizational skills and your attentiveness to detail. So make sure your content fits into the page limit specified and make sure the number of pages holds when you convert your document to a PDF. The second category of application components is that of conditionally required documents. Some applications must include 1, 2, or even all 4 of these, and it's your job to figure out which are required for your application. If you are applying as a nonprofit, then you must include your proof of nonprofit status issued by the Internal Revenue Service. We will not accept a letter of state sales tax exemption as proof of nonprofit status. If you are using a federally negotiated indirect cost rate in your budget, then you must include a copy of your final rate agreement. If you will create digital projects during the course of your project, then you must complete and submit a digital products plan. If you are requesting support for conservation treatment, then you must include detailed condition reports and/or formal conservation treatment proposals. Just like the required documents, omission of even one might result in your application's rejection. The third group of application components is supporting documents, and here is a partial list of examples. Supporting documents are optional. You may submit some or none. Include only those items that will supplement your proposal. This is not the place to introduce brand new information. Rather, as the name suggests, they should lend support to your project justification, work plan, and intended results that you've already specified in your application narrative. For example, have you identified a partner whose involvement is key to the project's success? If so, a letter of support or commitment would go a long way to reassuring viewers that they are on board and the project will succeed. Pictures can help give reviewers who may not be familiar with your institution, programs, collections, or community a better idea of what you're describing within your narrative. Vendor quotes or equipment specifications show you've done some of the legwork in getting appropriate estimates for project costs. We recommend that you be respectful of your reviewer's time and avoid any temptation to include hundreds of pages of extraneous material. Being judicious really does work to your benefit, as supporting documents can make or break an application. Include what is important, helpful, and directly relevant to your project, and stop there. In the following sections of this presentation, we will focus on these application components, the narrative and the budget. Please go to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for complete instructions on how to prepare and complete all of the application components. In this section, we will go over the questions you will need to answer in your project narrative and offer details on the review criteria associated with each of the three sections: project justification, project work plan, and project results. Now let's talk about the narrative. You have 7 pages to cover 3 very important issues, and the Notice of Funding Opportunity provides lengthy guidance on what the narrative should cover. First is the project justification. What need, problem, or challenge will your project address, and how was it identified? Describe how you have used demographic information, economic circumstances, condition assessments, and other relevant data from reliable sources to define the need, problem, or challenge and develop the scope for the project. Who is the target group for your project, and how have they been involved in the planning? Target group refers to those who will be most immediately and positively affected by your project. Identify the number of individuals in the target group or in each target group if you identify more than one. Who are the ultimate beneficiaries for this project? Beneficiaries refers to those who are likely to be aided in the long term by your project. They may or may not be the same as your target group. Identify the number of individuals who will benefit from your project in the long term if reliable and defensible counts are possible. Otherwise, describe the characteristics of the beneficiaries you expect to be served eventually by your project. In Section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity, under Review Criteria, you will find a list of questions that reviewers are asked to consider when they review your proposal. It is a good idea to refer to these as you craft your narrative to be certain you are providing reviewers clear, solid information. You will see that they correspond fairly directly with the prompts you are given to write your narrative. One of the prompts in the project justification section of the narrative is the identification of the need, problem, or challenge your project addresses. It is foundational in your application, so keep these points in mind. The federal government wants its investment to result in something getting better. As you define your need, problem, or challenge, articulate what will get better as a result of your project as precisely as possible. Will your museum be able to expand their services as a result of additional staff? Will new graduates be better prepared for the museum field with the requisite experience? Will collections be better cared for? Will their lifespan be extended? Will access to your collections and the information surrounding them be expanded? Identify why it is important that this particular change happens. Hone your problem definition carefully in clear, succinct terms. Gather and present data that support your problem definition. Project work plan. If the project justification section was the why, the project work plan section is where you identify the who, what, when, and how. Who will do what activities when and using what resources? You should explain how you will track your progress toward achieving your intended results and what you'll do if you need to correct course. We also ask that you think about risks that are inherent in your particular project and tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. I'll say more about risk in a few minutes. Please note that in your budget, you are required to add $3,000 per year for travel to an IMLS designated meeting. You will add this line item in the travel section of your IMLS budget form on the federal grants funds side of the budget. This expense is used to cover your participation in convening of grantees and a place and location to be determined by IMLS. Again, this is the list of questions in Section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity that reviewers are asked to consider when they review your proposal. So make sure your narrative is answering them effectively. Your work plan will be built on activities. So it is important to be clear about just what an activity is. An activity is something that someone does. It has a beginning and an end, just like projects. And you know you've finished it because it doesn't need to be done anymore. An activity is not a goal as a result or an outcome. Rather, it is something you do as part of striving to achieve those. Aim for a reasonable level of detail in identifying your activities. We also ask you to think about risks that are inherent in your particular project and to tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. Think of it as answering the question, what if? There is no checklist of risks, but every project has them. The best proposals will show that you are aware of them and have thought through a plan for dealing with them. Look at your activities and think about what could go wrong. Focus on the ones where your experience, your own or that of your group, tells you, yes, that could happen, and identify steps you would take in response. IMLS knows things go differently than expected. We just want you to be prepared by identifying implementable options. Here are some examples of risk that might be part of a project for which you might seek AAHC funding. A project may be dependent upon fundraising to generate the cost share, but it is not complete by the time the application is submitted. What will the institution do if that money is not available by the time the project gets underway? A project may be structured around university interns. Who will be selected and trained according to well thought out processes? What will happen if one or more interns drop out? What's the plan for replacing them mid-project? A project involving rehousing collections into new museum quality collection storage furniture might run into delays in preparing the space or in the delivery of the cabinets. What happens to the collection items then? How will the institution ensure that they remain safe and secure? A project depends on your community partners to achieve success, but one partner drops out mid-project. What do you do now? The third section of your narrative should be devoted to articulating your project's intended results. This section is your chance to convince the reviewers that your project will result in something getting better. The need or problem you identified in your project justification will be addressed directly, and it will be diminished or eliminated altogether. We ask you to tell us what data you will collect and report in order to measure your project's success. If your project will generate tangible products, and most do, here's the opportunity to describe them and make the case that they will be useful. And last but not least, we ask that you tell us how you will sustain the benefit of the project. How will this improvement that you propose to make continue once your grant is over. Again, here's the list of review questions that reviewers are asked to consider when they read and score the project results section of your narrative. These are found in Section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. All of your results should tie back to your need, problem, or challenge. You may well experience tangential benefits and/or positive outcomes, but make sure you identify them as in addition to and not instead of your original intended results. Reviewers are likely to see that as a disconnect. We often hear that defining intended results and success measures are challenging for applicants, so it's worth spending a bit of time on this here. Let's think back to the questions we referenced a couple slides ago when we talked about defining the need, problem, or challenge that your project is addressing. If you said someone will learn something, how will you know? If your problem is related to segments of your community being better able to work together, how will you know when that has been achieved? If collections will be better cared for, how will you be sure and how will you measure better? If you're digitizing to expand accessibility, how will you know when you've done it? This focus on results and measuring success in meaningful ways is not new. There has been a tremendous amount of work done on ways to measure success. For you as an applicant, though, we encourage you to consider using a logic model or an outcomes-based evaluation tool to explain your intended results and your plan for achieving them. So to recap, your narrative has 3 sections: project justification, project work plan, and project results, and you have 7 pages for it. The sections are all equally important. Write clearly, address what we ask you to address, and keep an eye on those review criteria. We're telling you here exactly what the reviewers will look for, so make it easy for them to find it and understand it. In this section, we will provide information on what to include in your project budget and budget justification, and provide some examples of allowable and unallowable costs. An important component of your application is the budget. This is the part of the application where you specify all the costs associated with your proposed project. The budget consists of 2 required components: the IMLS budget form and the budget justification. The IMLS budget form, shown here, is a fillable PDF that accommodates up to 3 years of project activities and expenses. The budget should include the project costs that will be charged to grant funds, as well as those that will be supported by cost share. In-kind contributions to cost share may include the value of services, such as donated volunteer or consultant time, or equipment donated to the project between the authorized start and end dates of your project. All the items listed, whether supported by grant funds or cost share, must be necessary to accomplish project objectives, allowable according to the applicable federal cost principles, auditable, and incurred during the award period of performance. The IMLS budget form can be downloaded directly from the IMLS website. As you develop your budget, keep in mind that there are certain costs that are either allowable or unallowable according to federal regulations. The allowability of a cost item for all federal grants are specified in the Code of Federal Regulations, also known as the CFR, sometimes referred to as 2 CFR 200 for short, but the full title is Title 2, Subtitle A, Chapter 2, Part 200 of the Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. Using the 2 CFR 200 as a basis, we've developed a short list of allowable costs that are most common to AAHC projects. See page 19 of the AAHC Notice of Funding Opportunity, which includes a partial list of the most common examples of allowable costs. This short list of allowable costs are also shown here on this slide. These costs may be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for with federal funds, or what you will pay for as part of your cost share. The rules about allowability apply equally to grant funds as well as cost share. When completing your project budget, be sure to check that all the costs you include, whether grant funds or cost share, are allowable. There are also some costs which are unallowable according to the federal regulations in 2 CFR 200. On page 19 of the AAHC Notice of Funding Opportunity, we also provide an abbreviated list of unallowable costs. These are also listed on here on this slide. Unallowable costs may not be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for, nor can they be a part of what you will pay for as part of your cost share. In fact, unallowable expenses can't show up anywhere in your proposal. As you prepare your application, it's a good idea to compare your list of proposed expenses against these lists of allowable and unallowable costs and against the appropriate set of cost principles. If after that you have specific questions, please contact us and we'll be happy to help. In addition to the IMLS budget form, you will also prepare a budget justification. This is an opportunity to provide in a more detailed narrative format an explanation or justification for the project costs. The budget justification should be written to follow the cost categories in the IMLS budget form. In the justification, you will identify each expense and show the method of cost computation used to determine each dollar amount, including any that you may have consolidated and summarized on the IMLS budget form. In other words, please show your math. For example, in the section Salaries and Wages, you should identify each person whose salary or wages will be paid with IMLS funds or by cost share, provide their names and describe their role in the project. Document the method of cost computation by including the base salary or wages for each person and the percentage of time each person is allocated to the project activities, which may be shown as a percentage of time, number of days, or number of hours. If cost share is being provided by unpaid volunteers, explain how you arrived at the dollar amount used to represent the value of their services. In the section for supplies, materials, and equipment, you should list each type of supply, material, and equipment you propose to purchase or provide as cost share for the project. Detail the number and unit cost for each item and explain how you arrived at the dollar amounts. You may also provide vendor quotes or price lists as supporting documents with your application. In summary, considering all the components of your application, there are 4 general characteristics of successful AAHC applications that reviewers will look for. As you prepare your application, keep these characteristics in mind. First, institutional impact. Your project should build the capacity of your museum and/or support the growth and development of museum professionals at your museums or HBCU. Second, in-depth knowledge. Your proposal should reflect a thorough understanding of current practice and knowledge about the subject matter. Third, project-based design. Your work plan should consist of a set of logical, interrelated activities tied directly to addressing the key need or challenge. And fourth, demonstrable results. Your project should generate measurable results that tie directly to the need or challenge it was designed to address. An application that has all of these four characteristics will stand out in the review process and will have the best chance of success for funding. In this final section of our presentation, we offer some application tips and next steps. We want to share with you the places to look for more information, such as the IMLS website, where you can find the awarded grant search to learn more about the projects we have funded through the AAHC grant program. The awarded grants search gives you an opportunity to explore our archive of grants that we have awarded in past years using a variety of criteria, such as institution name, location, and keywords. Your search will provide basic information about the award and a brief description of the project. This can be extremely helpful as you put ideas together for your own project. We have also posted the narrative and schedule of completion for a cross-section of successful applications from 2023. To find these examples, go to the sample applications on the IMLS website and scroll down the page to the AAHC examples. Looking at these proposals might help clarify your thinking about your own project. Each PDF contains a copy of the 7-page narrative and also the schedule for completion. We can only make grants to eligible applicants that submit complete applications, including attachments, on or before the deadline. So here are some tips to help you do just that. Start early. You've already done that by participating in this webinar. Become familiar with grants.gov's workspace. It has many good features, including upfront validation, which allows you to correct errors prior to submission, and the opportunity to collaborate with others in creating your application. Consider starting with the workspace overview and check out their tutorials. Do your background research. Make it easy for the reviewers to see that you are up to date and know what you're talking about. Be sure your application is complete. Check it against the table of application components in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Make sure all application components are in the proper format and follow the correct naming conventions. Submit to grants.gov early so you can correct any errors and avoid any trauma created by technology challenges. It's important to get your application submitted online through grants.gov before the deadline of November 15th, 2023. IMLS does not accept applications by mail or email. In order to register with grants.gov, you must have an active SAM.gov registration and unique entity identifier number. So make sure your registrations for both of these sites are complete, your accounts are active, and that any necessary passwords are current. Those registrations expire periodically, so do not wait until it is time to hit the submit button to check on them. You should coordinate with any other staff members, such as your authorized organization representative, who may hold the accounts and passwords you'll need to submit. Both the SAM.gov and grants.gov websites have robust help features and FAQs. If you run into technical issues with either of these sites, you should reach out to their help desks and request a tracking, case, or ticket number in order to document your issue and attempts at resolving it. Failure to have active SAM.gov or grants.gov registrations by the application deadline is not an excuse for submitting a late application. So again, start early. There are many components to the application, and the narrative is an essential and critical part of the package. Peer reviewers, who are museum professionals from all types of museums, will be selected by IMLS to read each application and provide constructive and critical comments on the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed projects. They also base their reviews only on the information contained in the application. So don't assume that a reviewer or IMLS will know something about your museum or your proposed project. To help make sure your narrative is as clear and complete as possible, revisit the Notice of Funding Opportunity and follow the narrative outline it provides. Be sure to consider the review criteria associated with each section of the narrative. Use headings, subheadings, or numbered sections in your narrative to make it easy for reviewers to read. Avoid generalities, acronyms, and jargon. The people who will review your application are museum professionals, but they may not be totally familiar with your particular field's shorthand. Make it easy for them to understand what you mean. An advantage to starting your application early is that you can ask a colleague to review everything with fresh eyes before you submit. Ask them to act like a reviewer who's seeing this for the very first time. Here are a few important dates relating to your application. Applications must be received through grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on November 15th, 2023. The date is non-negotiable. The timestamp is auto-generated by the grants.gov system, and we have no ability to override it. We will say this repeatedly to start early and submit your application early. That way, if you encounter a difficulty of any kind when submitting your proposal, you'll have some time to resolve the problem and resubmit. After the application deadline, IMLS staff will review your application for completeness and eligibility, and you will hear from us via email if there are any problems. Next, we will select experienced and knowledgeable peer reviewers to read your applications and provide scores and comments based on the criteria outlined in the AAHC Notice of Funding Opportunity. IMLS staff will examine your budget, your financials, and your track record with past and current grants. We then prepare materials for the IMLS Deputy Director for Museums and the IMLS Director. By law, the IMLS Director is charged with the authority and responsibility to make final award decisions, and this typically happens in May. In early June 2024, we will notify you by email of the award decisions and provide the scores and comments created by the reviewers. AAHC projects must be scheduled to start on the first day of July 2024. As you read through the NOFO and prepare your application, additional questions may arise before the application deadline. We can help you with learning more about the AAHC grant program or other grant programs at IMLS, address any specific concerns with the various application components, or help you understand the review process. You may contact IMLS program staff by email or phone. Contact information is listed on the grant program landing page on the IMLS website, which is also linked here on the slide. You may also schedule a counseling call to meet directly with program staff. Use the links found on the grant program landing page to find an available time slot on our calendar. You will then receive an email with a calendar invite and Microsoft Teams meeting link. Thank you for attending this webinar. Please reach out to IMLS if you have any questions about submitting your application. Thank you.